Good evening, everyone. Hey, it's Gina, and welcome to another episode of Transformative Healing for Trauma Survivors. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for spending your Monday evening with me. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you for coming in, for joining me. If you would hit the like button, I always forget to say this during my lives, but if you would hit the like and share, I would truly, truly appreciate that. Excuse me. Ooh, excuse me. Let me get a drink of water. All right. So if you've been following our channel for a while, you see the videos that I post, are all trauma related, childhood and adult trauma. They all have after effects, whether it's childhood trauma or adult trauma. The after effects can be very similar. And so if this is the first time you're here and the first time that you're seeing this video, I just want to say welcome. My name is Gina. I'm a certified neurotransformative specialist. That's a very long word. And basically what that long word means is that I'm fascinated with the brain. I'm fascinated with the neuroscience. I'm fascinated with neuroplasticity, neural pathways and things like that. So in my practice of the things that I do in the scope of coaching that I but I do with my clients, I should say, I actually help clients transform their minds, mind and body connection through non-clinical art therapy and in coaching as well. And so a lot of the practices and a lot of a lot of the modalities that we use is a combination of things that actually help release the trauma, release the past without reliving it. And so there's a lot of different things that we do. It's just been amazing. And so I always tell people, give me 10 weeks to transform you by doing the non-clinical art therapy and coaching together. And you will just, the benefits are phenomenal. And so welcome if this is your first time. It's good to see everybody. Welcome, Michael. It's good to see you as well. So again, week after week, that's what I talk about. I talk about trauma, the after effects of trauma. We have talked about healing modalities. And so I came across this word and it was actually pretty interesting exactly what this word means. And so when I start talking about it and things like that, what I'd like you to understand is that I don't want you to think that I'm trying to say that trauma makes us strong. Absolutely not. You shouldn't have to endure a traumatic event or any type of challenge to come out of the other end being strong, resilient, or anything like that. You should just be able to be strong and powerful and resilient on your own without something catastrophic like childhood trauma or adult trauma or any other trauma that happens. And so you shouldn't have to have, you shouldn't have to build yourself stronger because of those types of events and things like that. And so what I want to talk to you tonight about is a word called anti-fragility. And so when I seen this, I was like, oh, what does this mean? It kind of sparked an interest in me and kind of, the brain guru that I am and things like that too. But what I love about this is just, it's about turning your trauma into a triumph, turning it into like a personal, your personal growth, not looking at it as a negative, but looking at it more as a positive outcome and learning to grow and sit in the uncomfortableness of what the trauma, the after effects have been. And so many of us, we will run the other way. We don't want to sit with our trauma. We don't want to sit with the emotions. We don't want to sit with those feelings or those thoughts or anything. So a lot of people, what do? We either run the other way, we keep ourselves busy, we keep ourselves just on the go, 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 go until all of a sudden we're so wiped out that now we're on the couch for days, or we just, we just don't have any energy to do anything. And so anti-fragility, it goes beyond mere resilience, offering a framework for understanding how systems, whether it's individuals, organizations, or societies. So it's using not only are you surviving adversity, but you're using, you're growing stronger as a result of it. So yes, absolutely. You're turning defeat into victory. Absolutely. And so it's looking at the context of trauma in your personal development. And so what anti-fragility is it's the powerful idea that suggests that some people and systems thrive when exposed to stress, challenges, and volatile environments. So most trauma survivors, what ends up happening? We break under pressure. Um, and so we become very fragile in our what we adapt to, we improve and evolve. And so um, what we're trying to do is take it so we're not fragile and learn to use anti-fragility. And what we're trying to do is to thrive when we're under those stressful situations, to thrive when we have emotional, dysregulation, to thrive when there is a thought process that comes to mind. And so instead of running the opposite direction, you're literally facing it head on. And what it does is it actually helps in your personal development. It actually helps you grow. You actually develop more coping skills. You're able to sit with it, and you're able to, again, turn defeat into victory, exactly what Sly said. So let me kind of give you a little bit of some definitions so you kind of have an idea of what fragility is, resilience, and anti-fragility. So you kind of have an idea of what each one is. A lot of people, you've probably heard what resilience is. And that is basically the ability to bounce back to the original state after facing adversity. And so facing a challenge, whether it's, whatever you're going through in your life, childhood trauma, adult trauma, obviously that's what I'm specialized in. And so that's why I always bring that up. But any type of challenge or obstacle that comes your way that you face, maybe it's a daily basis, maybe it's a weekly basis. When that challenge comes to you, instead of giving up, you continue to bounce back. That's resilience. You kind of you go through that. You find the baseline. You find the level, and you kind of look at that, and and you remove the stressor. You remove exactly what's going on. Again, resilience. Again, it is. Sometimes it is running the opposite way, and but it's looking at the baseline and saying, okay, how can I remove the stressor? How can I remove what's going on within this? So that's resilience. Fragility is where you end up breaking under certain conditions, whether, or I shouldn't say you break. I don't like that word. I don't even like the word weaken, because I don't like that, because we're not broken and we're not really weak. It's just the things that we've gone through. We just become, let's just say, fragile, because that's exactly what it is. We become fragile. So we're exposed to stress, disruption, challenges, again, the things that we've endured in our life, whether from childhood to adulthood. And so what ends up happening is that we don't know how to, we may see ourselves as broken and weak, but that's not how you truly are. You're not broken and you're not weak. We have just faced something. And, you have faced something that has brought you down. And so maybe you don't have the right tools and resources. And so you struggle. And so sometimes you back off because you're like, I can't do this. I like that. I like that, Scott. This is kind of adding up to what you're what you're working on. And so that's phenomenal. And so it's looking into going, okay, I might struggle. I might fall down, but I'm going to get back up. That's exactly what it is. One of the examples I can use is, we've all learned to ride a bike. I'm sure all of us have. How many times did you fall off that bike? I'm sure it's probably more than 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. Can you imagine after the first time you fell off the bike and you never rode the bike again? Can you imagine? You would probably get later on in life and you'd probably grow up and go, man, all my friends and everything else, they're all riding bikes, but here I'm not. And so because it was a stressor in your life at that time, you didn't know how to handle that, and just say that your parents just let you give up. Okay. So that you were in a fragile state where you didn't know what to come. And so you just didn't do it. Okay. So resilience is where you can withstand challenges and you can remove the stress. So that's what resilience. Fragility is where you're not where you need to be. And so challenges, stress, disruptions, all of those things, it's very challenging for you to work through them right now. But what anti-fragility is, it goes beyond resilience. You don't just bounce back. Actually, what happens is you become stronger, more adaptable, more capable. And so what ends up happening is you find out how to handle those stressors. You find out how to benefit from the disorder, which the disorder would be, I wouldn't even want to call it a disorder. You benefit from the challenges of the after effects of the things that you're facing today, and you learn to thrive under pressure. You don't learn to thrive under pressure in a negative way, like most of us have learned to do by using negative coping skills which are maladaptive, but it's learning to thrive under pressure using the adaptive coping skills that you've learned, and look at it as, okay, what can I learn from this situation? How can I become stronger? How can I adapt to this situation? And how can I be more capable of handling it? And so that goes back to a lot of the, sorry, my brain just drew a blank. Oh my goodness, I am so sorry. I can't even think of what it's called. Sorry, my brain just went. It'll come back to me in a minute. But when you look at everything, oh, that's going to drive me nuts. What it is, I'm so sorry. But when you look at everything, and then I can't even think of the word. That's going to drive me absolutely crazy. But anyway, it's when you look at the situations, and then you have everything in a row, and you make your conclusion. But I can't think of what the word is I'm trying to say. But anyway, that's kind of what it is. So you're looking at everything. You're able to identify. You're able to look and say, hey, what is it going on? How can this benefit me? How can I adapt to the situation more positive? And how can I be more capable of handling future stressors? Sly Fox, what did you say? I fell more and wrecked after I learned to ride a bike than while I was learning, but I've done things I shouldn't have. Yes. So that's, I mean, so looking at it, so those are the three. And so, again, week after week, we always talk about, there's usually trauma topics. And so that this is a trauma topic, but what this is how anti-fragility applies to trauma. And so I wanted you to see that, yes, trauma is a negative thing that we've endured, but how can we look at it and say, okay, how can the events and the circumstances and the challenges we face throughout our trauma, how can we use that to change our life? And so when I seen this, I was like, oh, this is something interesting. And so it's growth through adversity. And so when you face trauma or a significant life change, what ends up happening is it gives you the experience to confront the weakness, the limitations of the old patterns. And I thought that was huge, because how many of us are afraid to confront things? Excuse me. How many of us are afraid to confront the things that we've endured because we don't know how to control our emotions? Or no, sorry, that's not what I meant. We don't know how to control our thoughts. We let the thoughts control us. I'm one of them. I'm learning. Like I've shared with you before, as somebody that has cognitive distortions, catastrophizing was my biggest one. And so it's looking at that and saying, okay, how can I control my mind and not let my mind control me? And so it's confronting that face on, head on, controlling it yourself without letting it control you. That is, I think, the biggest factor when it comes to trauma survivors. Cognitive distortions, or just the ruminating thoughts in general, is we end up allowing those thoughts to control us. And when you can start learning to control those thoughts, and when you have the tools and resources readily available, it's a game changer. It is a huge game changer when you can immediately stop those ruminating thoughts from controlling you and letting yourself know that you are safe and you are okay. It makes a huge difference. Limitations. What are you limiting in your life? Limitations. This is why I absolutely love neurographic art, the non-clinical art therapy that I do. The limitations. A lot of people don't even know limitations. Limitations literally started when, started probably when we were in the womb. That's probably when it started. You wouldn't believe how many things are transferred from mother to baby into the womb. So many things. And so this is something that came down from our ancestors and things like that. And there's a lot of limitations. And and it's recognizing one of those limitations. And some of the things that we do in the non-clinical art therapy is looking at limitations. Like I have a list of money. We'll just say money. Money's one of the biggest things, but that's a limitation. And so people will be like, oh, well, money, I'll never have money. I'll never be rich because, that's what my parents said and this and this and this. Well, technically that's a limitation. I'll never heal from trauma. That's a limitation. I'm never going to get well. That's a limitation. Where did that limiting belief come from? So what neurographic art does is it changes the neural pathways in the brain and in the subconscious, unconscious, and conscious levels. And so what it does is it actually starts releasing the trauma again and repairing the neural pathways, neuroplasticity, and releases the trauma from the body. Old patterns. What are the old patterns that you did when you had a trauma response? What did you do? A lot of us, we will, again, run the opposite direction. We don't want to face it. And so it's recognizing what your old patterns are, whether, what are your old patterns? Old patterns could be when you become dysregulated, but you may drink, you may smoke. So obviously those are maladaptive, those are negative. But what are your patterns? What type of patterns do you have, your old patterns that continuously come up over and over and over again that you're like, wait a minute, I think I see a pattern here. What is an old pattern? And so when you're able to confront all of these, your limitations, your patterns, the challenges that you face, when you're literally able to confront them, what ends up happening is something even greater. You start developing self-awareness, resilience, and even empowerment. And so by practicing what we're talking about, anti-fragility, it actually helps to build strength in ways that were not possible before trauma. I know you probably should. A lot of people are probably wondering, and it's pretty interesting. I'm just going to be straightforward because I'm very transparent when it comes to these videos. My trauma response, my trauma response when I do these videos, my nose itches. That is a trigger. If you've known me long enough and you hear week after week, you'll probably hear me. I don't like to speak negative because I just don't live there anymore. But unfortunately, for some reason, when I do lives, even when I'm recording my own videos, my nose will start itching. And I firmly believe it is it's a response, because if you've heard me talk in the past, I don't like public speaking, but I'm on this journey. God has me on this journey to speak about trauma, to speak about things. And so even when I record and nobody's watching me, but I know the world's going to see my videos, lo and behold, guess what happens? My nose starts itching. And so I don't itch it until it gets to the point that I just want to smack it off my face. So it drives me nuts. I try not to think about it. But now you see one of my things. I'm very comfortable on here. I'm very comfortable with everybody. So don't think like but for some reason I'm beginning to wonder. I'm like, I think it's my nose. I think my nose is like, it's a trigger that I'm actually speaking or whatever, but it's like, it's fine. But it's something that I'm, working through. I'm trying to get over because I have a conference coming up in February, as a lot of you know. And so I don't want to be sitting there itching my nose and rubbing my nose and everything as I'm, speaking professionally. Not that this isn't professional, but, I'm here. I'm myself. There I'll be myself. And if it happens, it happens. It's not like I can turn it off. And so I try to ignore it. But just as if with your cognitive distortions or your ruminating thinking, what ends up happening when you try to turn that off? Doesn't it come back fierce as ever? Well, that's what this nose of mine does. When I try to ignore the itching, it comes back. And so there you have it. So now you know exactly why. And so it itches, it drives me nuts. And it could just be allergies, the time of season. But you know what? I'm just being very transparent. I literally think it's because I do these lives And when I get on here and, so anyway, yeah. So thank you thank you for standing by and kind of letting me kind of share with you one of my other responses that takes place anyway in my life, because, I keep it real. So why not, right? So again, grow through adversity. You can build strength in ways that weren't possible before your trauma. And so again, it's looking at your old patterns, looking at your challenges and looking at your limitations and saying, how can I use these and benefit the outcome? How can I use these to make myself a better person? Keeps kicking my comments about roughhousing your nose. Well, it probably will. I don't know. Maybe it's thinking that you're trying to offer some, it's abusive language or something. I don't know. Isn't that funny? You know how that goes. So it's using all of those, to help you with your outcome, to help you slowly. And like I said to Scott in the beginning, we were chatting a little bit in the beginning, and, it's about small steps. You don't want to just jump in with both feet and just go off running. Absolutely not. When you are in recovery, when you are on this healing journey, it's a lifetime. You can heal, absolutely, but there's going to be things that are coming up. For me, I share this all the time. I didn't have any emotions for the longest time. And then all of a sudden I started doing neurographica, and I was like, holy mackerel, like I have emotions, and I'm not complaining, but when your body feels safe and your body knows it's safe, more things are going to start coming out. More things are going to come out. And that's what's happening to me. As I'm starting to feel safe, there's more things, the barriers are coming down and more things are coming out. But if I would have stuck 2 feet in, I would have been so overwhelmed with the heightened emotions that I'm feeling. And I don't feel the emotions that I'm feeling are in my heart. It's like heart emotions, which is huge. And so when I started doing it slowly, putting one foot in front of the other, what ended up happening was now I'm able to do it slowly. When it's small steps equals huge success. And small steps, you will be, I can't even think of the word, successful, but that's not the word I was looking for, but pretty much successful, because you're able to work on things one at a time. When things come at you one at a time, you're able to work through that challenge. Can you imagine if 10 different things came at you at a time? You'd be so overwhelmed, you wouldn't know where to start. And so it's finding the right rhythm, finding the right pattern that suits you, because you do have voice and choice when it comes to your recovery. A lot of us feel like we don't have voice and choice, because maybe we were minimized in childhood. Maybe we were minimized as we were growing up. Maybe, we had a narcissistic, manipulating, controlling spouse. I don't know. Different things. And so it's looking and saying, okay, I have voice and choice. I can speak up now because I feel I'm in a safe space to speak up about what I want. And it goes back to self-value. What do you value about yourself? What do you love about yourself? Or even if you're not really where the self-love is right now, what do you self-like about yourself? We'll just put it that way. So let's continue. Sorry, we got off on that little tangent there, but how anti-fragility applies to trauma. So the other thing is embracing life's uncertainties. And so trauma often forces us to have uncertainties. And so what it does is it teaches us as individuals to embrace those uncertainties. And instead of looking at them as a negative, what we want to do is we want to look at them as an opportunity for growth. So in other words, rather than fearing the next challenge, what you want to do is you want to look at it as a chance to improve and adapt. How can that circumstance, how can that challenge help you be a better person in the long run? What is it that you're looking at now from that challenge? And what are things that you can do to improve? Whether it's releasing a limitation, looking at your old patterns, and so it's bracing life's uncertainties and using it in a different way. Does that make sense? If we have any questions as well, you can always put them in the chat. You guys know that. Learning from failures or from your failures. How many times do you fail? Again, with like the bike riding, how many times do we fail and we just don't want to continue? We're like, ah, that doesn't work. Or you try it once or twice and you're like, yeah, this isn't working. And then you give up. How many of us do that? I'm sure there's a lot of us that really do that. Um, and so what the learning from the failure is instead of viewing the failure as a setback, what anti-fragility encourages people is to see it as a step towards growth. So it's using the value of it, and it's the value that actually leads to learning how to be successful in the future. It's taking that difficult situation, looking at the mistake, the difficult situation, and how that can lead to like greater insights, more insights, greater self-improvement. How can you use this to, again, to diminish those old patterns? How can you use this mistake to say, okay, I have this, but I want to look at the new insight. I may have failed this time, but how can I improve it so I can actually, I'm able to improve it and I'm able to get it done. That is self-improvement. Absolutely. You have to fail. Failing is a key to learning, exactly like Scott said. And this is so true. You have to fail. Failing is what allows us to grow. Failing is what allows us to see the mistakes that we made and say, okay, I made this mistake, but what new insights can I gather from this to have greater self-improvement? That's huge. That's huge. And so it's looking at it, and it's looking at that type of situation. Again, you have to fail in order to come out. I'm not saying you have to, but most of the time, in order to build anti-fragility, and in order to see the growth, and in order to face that growth through those difficult challenges, there has to be some sort of failing, because if you didn't fail in anything, you wouldn't be able to give the opportunity for growth and development, self-improvement. And so, just kind of remember that as well. So it's looking at those challenges, facing those situations, facing those challenges, and looking at those mistakes and offering yourself compassion, kindness, and looking at it and saying, okay, I'm looking at everything that I have. How can I see this in a different way that it's going to help me improve my life, help me improve who I am today, and help me improve for the future? That's huge. Key principles of anti-fragility and personal development. Again, this is another area that voice and choice is very important. When you have the voice and choice of, the things that you're going through your own trauma, recovery, and recovery in general, healing. Doesn't always have to be trauma, but obviously that's what it is. But what I talk about, but any type of challenges that you're facing, and so it's looking at the idea of anti-fragility and saying, okay, I have many ideas. I have many, or not ideas, but I have many options and opportunities. And it's looking at, how are you going to respond to those opportunities? How are you going to respond to those challenges? And so it's looking at, this is where mindfulness is really huge and comes in. It's looking at your old patterns. What are you doing? What coping skills are you using? And so when people that have, and they embrace their anti-fragility, what ends up happening is that you build multiple skills. And you learn to use more adaptive coping skills, and you learn to look at your old patterns and you develop new patterns, more adaptive, more positive patterns. What it does is it helps you in relationships. It helps you in forming better relationships, options. It helps you with what options you have in recovery. Again, it goes back to voice and choice. It's just a huge thing when it comes to that. Because a lot of us don't realize that we have voice and choice. I know I just talked about this a second ago, but I just have to reiterate, because you have to use your voice and know that you have choice. You have to stand up for yourself, because Most of the time, nobody else is going to. So sometimes we have to have our own backs. Um, Stress and strain lead to growth. And so just as muscles grow stronger when we exercise, when you go through challenges, it actually helps us mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, when we face these challenges. Again, it opens up a whole new ball game, a whole new dimension of things for us to say, oh, wow, look at everything that I'm going through. The stress and strain can lead to growth. Look at everything that I have on the table. What can I do with these, and how can I use these to grow? How can I look at these and say, okay, I want to look at my challenge, but I want to be able to work out my challenge um, in more of a psychological and like an emotional, resilient way. And so that's looking at all of your facts, everything that you have laid out, all of the challenges, and making and going through and then coming up with your answer. How are you going to deal with things? And so it's not saying that your trauma is going to make you stronger. This is saying look at stress and look at the strain that happens in your life from the after effects of trauma, from a difficult challenge, from all kinds of other things. It doesn't even have to be trauma, but it could be trauma. It could be a divorce. It could be abandonment. Maybe you have a child, abandonment. Hi, Preston. Thank you for joining. It could be difficulty in relationships. There's a slew of things. So when I just mentioned trauma is just one of the topics, because obviously that's, what I kind of, the education and knowledge and the background, the life experiences comes into play. But when anti-fragility, what ends up happening with that is you see the difficulties as opportunities to work things out. So you're not literally looking at it and saying, oh, this is just another day to be miserable. Oh, this is just another day to say, oh, I'm a failure. Or, oh, this is another day to let this, and this happen. No. When you have the anti-fragility, literally, I shouldn't say you have it because we all have it. It's just a matter of getting that oomph and getting up and actually allowing it to work in our lives. And so, for example, someone who has faced a traumatic experience may use it as an opportunity to reflect, heal, and develop new coping skills. Exactly. So it's looking at those old patterns, those limitations, the things that we've gone through, and looking at it and saying, how can I develop new coping skills? How can I use this challenge that I'm facing today? And how can I be better for tomorrow or the future? This is a prime example of developing new coping skills. This is where, stress and strain lead to growth. This is another huge thing would be like boundaries. Boundaries are so huge, but a lot of us, we fail to use them. And the reason that we fail to use them is because we lack self-worth, and a lot of us lack self-love. And so we figure that we don't value ourselves. So we just allow people to instill all of that junk onto us, and they spill it onto us, when in fact, we don't need any of that. Like, that's where a lot of the boundary playing comes into play. And so that's a new coping skill, boundaries is. And so it's using that opportunity to say, okay, maybe it is developing a new coping skill. Maybe it's to say, okay, I want to be able to heal and develop more, and have greater self-improvement. And I want to be able to reflect on this, but okay, now I need to figure out how I'm going to put boundaries into place. And so that's a huge thing as well. Remember that small, frequent failures allow you to experiment, learn, and improve without risking catastrophic outcomes. So you're literally looking at your failures. And you're saying, okay, how can I learn from these? What are they telling me? How can I improve my life because of these small failures? This is huge for people that need personal growth or want personal growth. This is another big one for somebody that may seem, they may get overwhelmed. Again, what I just talked about not too long ago about everything coming at you at one time. And so it's looking at taking risks, but without being too overwhelmed, allowing one or two things to come out at a time and dealing with them as what you see them and looking at them as, looking at the failures and saying, how can this help me improve? What can I do? Same thing with the bike. Same thing with the bike. When you fell off the bike 50 times, well, you got back up the 51st time and you started riding your bike. So it's looking and saying, okay, I keep falling off my bike. What can I do different? I keep doing this, but how can I do it differently? So you're looking for a different outcome. You're looking for a more positive outcome. You're using something that is challenging, that is teaching us to grow or helping us grow in an area. And what you're doing is you're trying to develop that into a positive outcome. How can that be life-changing for you? And so by doing that, what ends up happening is this is how you start developing the anti-fragility. It's by looking at your circumstances, and it helps you build your psychological muscle. And so it's looking at your brain. And then as you do this, you're literally looking at what all the meaning is all these small challenges. And now you have a different outcome. And so that's what you're applying, the different outcome. And so some of us get stuck in the 4 F's: fight, flight, fawn, and freeze. And so when that happens, it's looking at, that would be a whole nother session, because each one of them, the characteristics of each one of them, they're so they're significant to each one. And so there's a lot that goes into those. And so those do play a role in the way that we handle anti-fragility. And so, for instance, if you have fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, you would have to look at, and I'm bringing that in because that is a part of transformation. It's a part of looking, because when we have triggering, we usually have one of them. And so it's looking and saying, okay, when I have fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, what is a better, when I have those, how can I use them in a better way? How can I sit with the uncomfortableness of that and calm myself down gently instead of running to do something different? So do you see that's the difference? So you're looking at one of those, and they are very uncomfortable to sit through. I will be the first to tell you, but what you're doing is you're literally being able to sit and engage your mind and body together to overcome what's happening. And you're using your new coping skills. You're able to heal and develop, your coping skills and use them when that starts happening. And so, it's really looking at what coping skills, what tools and resources you have learned, whether in coaching, therapy, with your mental health professional, of what are you doing? What are the things that you're using to help you? And so I say that because when those come into play, looking at them as, not looking at it like, oh man, now I'm a failure because now I'm still in this. No, looking at it and saying, okay, why? Why did this happen? How can I shift from being in fight to being in, because we literally go through all of them. And, but, just say you're in fawning right now, and, you're trying to shift out. So it's like, okay, how can I shift from fawning into not having that experience at all when I'm triggered, or or challenge breaks, or not a challenge breaks. If a challenge comes up, how can I get out of fight or flight, fawn, or freeze? What is a positive outcome that I can do? And so your positive outcome would be to go into your toolbox and look at what tools you have. What tools and resources were you given? And look at it and say, okay, which one do you want to practice? And then I would literally write it down, and every day I would read it. And here's why. Because when you're triggered to the point that fight, flight, fawn, or freeze is kicking in, your prefrontal cortex is already shut off. Your anterior cingulate cortex, that's a big long word too, is not working as well. And so that's where your logical thinking, that's where logical thinking, executive functioning, that's where a lot of people say, I'm lazy, or not, they don't even say it. Somebody else will say, oh, such and such is lazy, when in fact, it's really not that they're lazy. Their anterior cingulate cortex is probably damaged or underdeveloped. And so that's why they seem like they're lazy, but they're really not. Your anterior cingulate cortex is also responsible for oversharing. There's people that like to overshare their trauma, or they overshare certain situations. And so if somebody overshares with you, it's usually the people pleaser, and it's usually because their anterior cingulate cortex is probably underdeveloped or damaged from some sort of trauma. And so why I say this is for this reason. Is that you have to ingrain whatever coping skill that you're using. So you need to ingrain it into your brain, because when you are triggered and you go into fight, flight, fawn, and freeze, whatever coping skills, whatever tools and resources that you have learned is going to go right out the window. It's literally every day speaking that, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day, speaking what coping skill you want to work on for the next couple of weeks, maybe next month, and try to embed it into your brain. Because in that moment of you embedding into your brain, in that moment of you doing it every day, you're literally developing that skill. So when those happen, automatically that is going to kick in. That's why it's so important for trauma survivors to do trauma-informed movements. So important. I cannot stress it enough to do trauma-informed movements and progressive muscle relaxation daily. What it does is the trauma-informed movements get your prefrontal cortex and your anterior cingulate cortex back online. And so you switch from trauma brain to adult brain. And what the PMR, progressive muscle relaxation, does, and it actually starts releasing the stress and some of the trapped trauma from your cellular level. So those two go hand in hand. They're a huge tool and resource that I use in my practice. And so I can't say enough about using them two together. You will notice a huge difference, because when you do go into fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, what ends up happening is your body automatically takes over. And so that's what I'm saying. When you start doing it and doing it and doing it, your body's going to automatically take over. And so you're developing a new skill, because now your body knows what that skill is. And it's actually a huge benefit, but it's really neat to see when that happens, when you're in the stressful situation, and you're triggered and your prefrontal cortex shuts off, and all of a sudden your body just automatically takes over and does one of those trauma-informed movements, or does something, without you even doing it, like, from the unconscious level. It's actually a really neat experience to witness. And so next topic is how anti-fragility transforms trauma into growth. And so, once you start practicing all of these and you get into that anti-fragility and things like that. So what it does is it takes the traumatic event that initially caused you to feel victimized or powerless. And what it does is it takes your mindset on, it takes it from kind of the negative, kind of, going into the positive direction the other way and things like that. And so what it does is it leads you to realize that, that what happened to you doesn't define you, and that you're looking for more growth. You're looking to thrive, not just survive. And so what it does is it allows you to grow as a result. And so it's looking and saying, okay, you don't want to feel victimized or powerless anymore. You don't want your trauma to define who you are. You want to look at your trauma and say, okay, this happened to me and it was unfortunate. But how can I have an anti-fragility type of mindset and say, okay, I want this to lead me to potential, to where I can recover and I can thrive, I can grow, and I can do that to help myself as a result. And so this actually comes into what, with me getting on here. This is a part of where shifting from victim to survivor to thriver. And so one of the instances is, as a survivor of abuse, you may find strength through advocacy, empowerment, or using your experience to help others. And so that's exactly what I'm doing. And so I'm actually practicing anti-fragility and never even realized it. And so when I came across it, it was actually interesting. And so it's looking at what I've endured in my life, and I can offer more compassion, more empathy, because I understand when somebody goes through something, I can understand exactly, how you feel, because I've been there. Whether it's childhood trauma or adult trauma, there's a lot of after effects that are have a lot of similarities. And so I can still offer that same compassion, that same kindness, that same empathy, because I know big trauma, little trauma, it's all trauma. It doesn't matter if it's, whatever trauma, doesn't matter. There's all after effects. And so I think that's why, I like doing, what I'm doing and things like that, and getting on here and sharing and just trying to educate. I mean, I don't know everything, and I don't say that I know everything, but I just think it's important, because a lot of people go day to day and they have no idea that they've even endured trauma. And until you start showing them or teaching them about the signs and symptoms, I can say, hey, it sounds like you've had childhood trauma. Oh, no, I had a good childhood. And then all of a sudden you start giving them symptoms and signs and things like that. And they're like, oh, wait a minute. And a lot of times what ends up happening is that it's not that they didn't know that they didn't endure it, but sometimes they start repressing a lot of what ended up happening, and said they don't remember, but their body does. But it's the body that you have to identify. What signs and symptoms are you having? That's how you start understanding childhood trauma, or trauma for that. That's how you start recognizing when people have endured trauma. It's not saying, oh, well, this, and this. It's looking at the signs and symptoms. And so it's looking at the experience, and that's exactly what I do. I like to bring the experiences. I like to educate on the after effects that I know of. And I like to be like an advocate for mental health, but I like to empower and inspire each and every one of you, because we're all kind of on a similar journey, even though, our traumas may have been different, but we're all on this journey, and this journey is called healing. It's called recovery. And so that's why I do this week after week. Even if my nose continues to itch and I just want to rip it off, doesn't matter. I'm still here. Even if I don't like public speaking, guess what? I still stand up in front of people and I still speak. And I eventually will stop saying that I hate public speaking, because I really don't mind it. I don't like the attention to be on me, as most of us don't. Scott, thank you so much for your kind words. I really appreciate you as well coming and supporting me week after week. It really means a lot to me to have each and every one of you here. It does. And so, I'm a huge advocate for the mental health community, huge advocate for truth, a huge advocate for bringing tools and resources, different topics, knowledge, different people on here. And so I just believe that we're in this together. And so that's another reason that I'm doing the conference, is because so many people don't even know that they've had trauma. But when we start saying, okay, what are the signs and symptoms? And then they're like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, well, I have this that happens. And then it starts sparking interest, or, not triggering in a bad way, but starts triggering something in their mind. And they're like, oh, well, maybe that is me. And so that's why the topics at the conference are totally different. They're topics related to trauma in a different way. And so, I'm hoping that some of you will be able to join. We do have specials for trauma survivors, war veterans, and things. We do have specials. And then we have payment plans as well. You have a 6-month payment plan and things like that. But I hope that some of you will join us because the topics and the things that you'll learn there are going to be absolutely amazing. And they're hands-on demonstrations and things like that too. So enough about that. But I think you would truly benefit from attending that conference. I'm super excited. It's actually, even though it's for 2 days, but leading up to it, we're going to have pre-conference sessions too. So you'll be able to go into those conference sessions if you want, and and learn some more stuff as you go along and stuff. So I think it's going to be amazing, not just because I'm the founder and the one putting it on, but hey, maybe I'm a little biased, but that's all right. All right. So another thing that transforms trauma into growth is deepening your emotional intelligence. intelligence, sorry. And so this is looking at your emotions and going, okay, how can this traumatic event or whatever circumstance, again, I'm just going to say it again because it doesn't always have to be trauma, but what is this circumstance, this challenge that I'm facing, and how can it give me a chance to understand my emotions? How can it help me to form a growth, and allow yourself the ability to feel. How many of us, again, don't like to sit with the emotions? There's a lot of people that dissociate. They have some dissociation, and so zoning out periodically is okay. But when you have a form of dissociation, and you are literally having outer body experiences, and like literally like you don't even feel like you really need to seek professional help through a psychologist, because that is something that uh, is an after effect of trauma. It's where you're not facing what's going on, and so you're numbing your emotions, but you're literally numbing your entire body, and so that is a maladaptive coping skill. And so that really needs a psychologist or even a psychiatrist to actually work to unfold exactly what's happening. And so one of the ways that I can kind of help you, doesn't mean that you have dissociation when I tell you this, but a lot of people are like, oh, what is dissociation? So think of it this way. You take the same route to work every single day. And all of a sudden you're on that same route and you're going to work. And all of a sudden, you get to work and you're like, did I even stop at the red light? Did I stop at all the stop signs? I don't even remember even getting off the highway. Okay. Technically, that can be a form of dissociation. But for people that don't have dissociation, don't get alarmed, because that's not what it is. That just basically means that you are very familiar with that route, and your brain knows that route, that yes, you probably stopped at every stop sign. You stopped at every traffic light and you obeyed the laws, absolutely. But your brain was focused on that you just don't remember. So that is kind of the difference. Dissociation is having an outer body experience. It's like literally you're watching yourself out of body. That's another form of dissociation. And so you want to make sure that your emotional awareness is a powerful form of growth. Because what happens is it allows for greater emotional regulation and resilience in future stressors. So you don't want to end up dissociating. You want to end up looking at your emotions and feeling your emotions and saying, what are my emotions telling me? From somebody that didn't have any emotions. I mean, I had emotions, but like, I'd be looking at people watching movies and they'd be bawling their eyes out. And I'm like, yeah, what's wrong with them? Like, okay, this movie, yeah, okay, this movie was sad, but I didn't feel anything. Again, until I started doing the neurographic art and started working through my emotions and things like that. And now I'm like, ooh, I'm actually, wow. Like I have emotions that I never knew existed. And so I feel them in my heart. Again, like I said in the beginning, that's where I feel my emotions, is in the heart. Which is huge. And then building a new narrative. And so it's looking to reconstruct our personal narratives, and looking at it from the context of anti-fragility. So it's looking at not allowing the trauma to define our life, but instead, how can that be a story of transformation? So again, the trauma doesn't define, it's not a defining event of our life. The trauma doesn't define us. But what we're looking at in the anti-fragility is looking at it like, how is this an ongoing story of transformation? How can I look at this life event and how can I transform? Hi, Heather. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. How can you do that? And so what ends up happening when you're looking at it by building a new narrative, by looking at, the trauma and the things that it caused and the defining events of the trauma, of the things that have occurred in your life. It's looking at it like, okay, this becomes a chapter in a larger, like a larger book. It's the ongoing story of transformation. And so what ends up happening is it's the process of anti-fragility involves acknowledging the hardship, acknowledging you had trauma, acknowledging that maybe that divorce that you had was very difficult, maybe acknowledging that you have a trauma wound, maybe there's something else going on. And it's looking at that hardship and acknowledging it, but also embracing the lessons that are learned from it. What can you learn from it? How can you be the person? How can you look? I'm trying to think. How can you look at that trauma and embrace that hardship and be the person that you want to be? How can you change from over here to over here? Does that make sense? So it's learning to look at the trauma, saying the trauma doesn't define me. The trauma is an event of my life, but I'm not going to let it define me. What I'm going to allow it to do is transform my life into something else. Maybe I don't want to say anything better, but it's looking at it and saying, I want to transform it, because when you transform it and you embrace that hardship, when you embrace the lessons of what is this hardship telling me, what ends up happening is it starts changing who you are. You start becoming somebody different. Always remember this. You will never go back to the person you were pre-trauma. Never. And realistically speaking, who would want to? The trauma changed us. But by building a new narrative, what you're doing is you're looking and defining that event, that challenge, and you're saying, okay, I want to become somebody different. I want to become somebody better. And so you're going to look at this challenge and this hardship, and you're going to embrace it. And through that obstacle, through that challenges, through the emotions, you're going to say, okay, now this is the person I'm becoming because of it. And you're going to become a better person because of it. In the way that you're supposed to, in the way that not saying that in a negative way, but you're not going to be a better person because of your trauma. You're going to be a better person because of the way you're embracing it, the lessons that you learned from it. So let me just reiterate that so you understand that. So it's looking at the hardship, embracing it, looking at the things that you've endured, allowing that story to transform you into somebody different, into somebody better. It's not the trauma that's transforming you. It's using the difficulties, the hardships, and acknowledging them to actually do that as well. And so we've been on here for almost an hour, so I'm gonna kind of close with this one. Do we have any questions or anything? Any questions? Is there any topics? I know I say this all the time, but is there any topics or anything like that you guys would like to see, would like to learn about, or anything like that? And so the last thing I want to talk about is the anti-fragility mindset, focus on growth. People with an anti-fragility mindset are focused on growth, no matter the circumstance. And so they're looking at what ends up happening is when you have an anti-fragility mindset and you're looking at growth, you're looking at embracing everything that happened. It's looking at your challenges and saying, how can this challenge help me? Instead of saying, how does this challenge hinder me? Do you see what I mean? There's a difference. And so you want to look at it and you want to say, okay, how can this challenge that I've endured, how can this challenge allow me growth? And so you don't want to avoid the discomfort or uncertainty. Those are the things that you want to embrace. You want to be able to embrace the you want to be able to embrace the uncomfortableness. You're changing your name. Why are you changing your name, Michael? What are you changing your name to? Sly Fox, I don't know if you'll get any deer tomorrow. I mean, I could pray that you'll get a deer and fill up the freezer and more food for you because, nope. So yeah. Yeah. Is that what you're talking about? Michael Fox. Yeah. See, I mean, there you go. We could all be family in here. Michael, your family. You don't have to change your name. We could all be family. You don't have to change your name. It's all good. Um, and so again, people with anti-fragility, when you want that mindset, it's focusing on growth, no matter the circumstance. Don't let that negative, no, don't let that fear creep in. It's focusing on growth. It's looking at that challenge, whatever you're enduring in the moment, and looking at it and saying, how can I grow? How can I grow from this circumstance? How can I? So what you're trying to do, instead of seeking to avoid, because we don't like discomfort and we don't like uncertainty, you're trying to embrace it. You want to embrace it and you want to learn from it. That's the difference. It's the growth portion of it. How can I grow from this? And then long-term thinking. It encourages us to look at the long-term outcomes. And so even though the things that we deal with are painful and short-term, what we believe over time is that these experiences contribute to personal growth and strength. And so it's looking and saying, okay, yes, anti-fragility encourages looking at long-term outcomes. So your trauma, your outcomes, we don't want them to be long-term. We want them to be temporary. Oh yeah, I forgot is his last name Fox? That's funny. I think I forgot. I think you did. Yeah, you did tell me that. That's funny. And so it's really looking at everything and saying, okay, I want to believe that this is just short term, and I want to be able to bring in so these experiences can contribute to personal growth and strength over time. So again, anti-fragility is literally using your and overall, basically what it is, in conclusion of the concept of anti-fragility, it provides a framework for turning trauma into a source of personal empowerment. Yes, it's funny because everybody in here is we're all family. And I love that. So rather than seeing life's challenges as something to avoid or escape, individuals with an anti-fragility mindset learn to embrace and learn from adversity, ultimately become stronger, more adaptable, and become equipped to thrive in an unpredictable world. And so it's huge. It's huge. And so I would encourage you to maybe do a little bit of research on anti-fragility and work on it. Work on turning that trauma into a source of personal empowerment. How what challenge are you facing today? Not just trauma. I mean, again, I just say that, but what challenge are you facing today? And looking at it and turning it into something, and into something else. And what something I do want to bring up really quick is because there are some that struggle with this, and it was in my notes somewhere along the line. That I wanted to bring up because it was actually a really good point. Because there's people that their anxiety. Oh, I'm trying to figure out where it is. Oh, goodness gracious. I'm like, where is that? I don't remember. I thought it was in my notes, but maybe it wasn't. Oh yes. Okay. So one of the things that I skipped because I didn't really want to keep everybody on here for a long time is practical steps to cultivate anti-fragility in life. And so some of the things one of the things in here that is really interesting is seek discomfort. And so engage in activities that push you out of your comfort zone. These can be small, like public speaking or trying something new, or larger, like taking on a difficult project at work or exploring a new hobby. These discomforts actually build resilience. And so I have it over here on my desk somewhere. And not only does it build resilience, but what ends up happening is it builds your confidence up. And so, that's one of the things that when you seek the discomfort, it's not that you're seeking it, but when the discomfort is there, it's pushing yourself out of that comfort zone. And so people that have social anxiety, people that have difficulty leaving their home, going into crowds. I'm not telling you to go into the crowds, but look what you can do to push yourself out of that comfort zone. If you don't like to go to the grocery store, you know what? Walk in, walk around a couple aisles. If you get dysregulated, walk back out. Like, to give you an idea, I brought this up because I don't like hospitals. Can't stand them. I don't like doctors. I have had medical trauma, and medical trauma is not just things that they've done. It could be through their words, and obviously misdiagnosing you, and just saying things about you and things like that. So I do have some medical trauma. And so I don't like the doctors. I don't like going to the doctors, even though I need to. We need to from time to time. But I don't like going to the doctor. And this evening, our son is sick. He's got some sort of virus that he's caught. And so he's sick. And so I didn't know if he had pneumonia, bronchitis. I didn't know what exactly was going on with him. And so I should have taken him this morning, and I didn't. And so I was like, I'm going to take him this evening. Well, kind of hoping that Sly Fox would have been home to take him, because I don't do good with that type of stuff. And so thank you, Heather. And so I walked into the hospital, and I literally could feel my body becoming dysregulated. And I thought, I don't like this. Like, this is the worst feeling. And I thought, well, I could walk back outside, or I could just embrace this. And so it's interesting that this was the subject for tonight, or the topic for tonight. And I said, I can embrace this. What can I learn from this? Because they're not working on me, but I will make sure as an advocate that my son gets the proper care that he needs. And realizing that now I have voice and choice. And I'm hoping that if I don't have voice and choice, that my husband would be a very good advocate for me in the time that I don't have that ability. And so during the discomfort of being in the hospital, the room was probably very warm, but I was freezing. And so that is how my anxiety usually comes out in situations like that. My hand was cold. I was very freezing. My feet were like ice cubes. But I learned to embrace the discomfort. And I thought, you know what? I'm safe. My son's safe. I need to be here because there's nobody else to bring him. I even said to my daughter, oh, if you didn't have your finals tonight and you didn't go to school, I would just have you take him. I was looking for avenues to try to get from taking him, because the pediatrician's office, that's a whole nother ball game, but the pediatrician's office wouldn't give me an appointment. It was stupid anyway. But I learned to embrace the discomfort. Doesn't mean that tomorrow I'm going to sit in the lobby of the hospital. No, in time, but I don't like hospitals. And so why I bring that up is because I was pushed out of my comfort zone. There's things that I do. I don't like, I'm being very transparent, but I don't like to go out. I don't like to be around a bunch of people. There's some things that happened, and I don't like to be around a lot of people, and so I'm working through that and learning to embrace the discomfort and push myself out of my comfort zone by going and doing it. So if I don't like to eat in front of people, it doesn't mean that I still can't go out to eat. It just means that I'll just sit there and drink while you eat, and that's perfectly fine. And it's kind of doing the exposure. It's called exposure therapy, I believe is what it's called. And exposure therapy is where you expose yourself to things that are difficult, but it doesn't mean that you have to partake in those. So that means if I don't like going out to eat, that means I can still go to the restaurant with my husband or my family. If I don't feel comfortable eating, that just means I just don't eat. And that just means don't push me to eat, because I'm not comfortable eating in a public setting right now. And so I'm learning to embrace the difficulties that I'm facing, and work through them and get out of my comfort zone. Embrace failure as part of the process. So when you fail or face adversity, instead of seeing it as something to avoid, view it as the necessity for growth. Reflect on the experience, learn from it, and apply those lessons to your next challenge. So those are two huge things. And then the third one that I want to talk about in closing is practice self-compassion. So anti-fragility doesn't mean being invincible or, not being hurt. But what it means is to be kind to yourself. accepting, accepting, they use the word vulnerability, but I like using the word accepting, yourself to be transparent, and using self-compassion as a way to for emotional growth. And so wherever you see vulnerability, I don't really like that word. I think that, I mean, it's all right, but I think it sounds more of a negative stance. Transparency, being transparent, is where you're being vulnerable anyway. And I kind of like that word a little bit better. And so, realizing that that there's still some things that can hurt you, but to be kind and compassionate with yourself. Um, Treating yourself as you would if a friend came to you with the same situation. What advice that you would give them is the same advice you should give yourself, within reason. Don't be a smarty pants, treat yourself with self-compassion. And what that does is it helps your emotions grow. It helps you to sit with that uncomfortableness, and it allows you to have that personal and emotional growth that you need. So not only are you working on the psychological, so the unconscious, conscious, and conscious level, but now you're working on the body. So you're working on not only the psychological, but the physiological level too, or yeah, both levels, the physiological and the psychological. And so you need those when you're working through your trauma, when you're trying to build anti-fragility in your life, you need that connection of both. Because again, the trauma is just not stored in your brain. The trauma is stored in your body. So again, it goes from, your prefrontal cortex to your amygdala, I'm sorry, yeah, your amygdala, the hippocampus, all of those, because that's where all the memories are stored. The subconscious, that's where all the memories are stored. And so, when you get a body experience and your body dysregulates, that's what sets off the mind. And so it's working through all of these challenges, and realizing that, you want to have a better outcome. You want to be a better person by allowing that circumstance to take place. But what can you learn from it? What can you embrace from it? So I'm hoping that you learned something new tonight. When I seen this, I was just like, oh, this would be a good topic. And so I'm glad that I was able to share it with each and every one of you, because this is kind of like, it's one of those things that looking at our circumstances and saying, how can I use this for growth? How can I use this for the better good? And, and looking at it in a better way than looking at it as derogatory or negative and things like that. So it's looking at it and saying, what life lessons can I learn and what can I use to become a better person and things like that too. So we have any questions or anything like that? So next week, I think I will continue working on something more as a positive outcome. So next week I was kind of thinking on, I kind of wrote down a couple topics and stuff to kind of see. Let's see. Does anybody journal, like expressive writing, journaling? There's that one. There's healing through nature and ecotherapy. Those are huge too. Ecotherapy and nature. We've talked about these. Everybody on here that's in the chat that I can see, they all love nature. Ecotherapy is a huge thing. And so I firmly believe in nature and ecotherapy. I really believe that nature has a lot of healing principles, a lot of healing. You journal, that's really good, Scott. Journaling is huge. And so I might, maybe we can talk about journaling and a little bit of ecotherapy and nature and things, although, not a whole lot of us can actually get out in nature right now because it's cold. But, there's a lot of different topics when it comes to, changing. Hi, Nick. And changing things, giving you different, voice and choice, different healing modalities, tools and resources that you can use in your toolbox. And journaling is a huge thing. Journaling takes, what's up here, and you can either, journal it out, draw it out, and do whatever you want. And so that's what I love about neurographic, is because the mind sees symbols and it relates to these symbols. And so it's the symbols that we use inside the drawings to help us. And circles are harmony. Circles are harmony. I can't remember what squares are, but triangles are conflict. And so it's using all of those and things like that too. So journaling is huge. Journaling, expressive writing, expressive arts, ecotherapy, nature. And so I think we'll kind of continue this leading up to a lot of the things that we can do and see kind of, changing the pace a little bit leading up into Christmas and things. And again, I know the holidays, can be difficult for some. And so looking at, with the holidays being difficult and embracing those challenges, embracing those difficulties, learning to embrace them, sit with the challenges, sit with the emotions that are coming up and saying, what can I learn from this? How does this emotion, how are these benefiting me? With what's coming up for you. And sometimes it's just a matter of sitting and saying, okay, what is this telling me? Okay. And what is it bringing up for you? So make sure that you like, I'm sure that most of you are subscribed, but if not, and you're here for the first time, again, welcome. Make sure that you subscribe. I try to do, we're here weekly. I'm going to try to start doing Wednesdays probably after the first of the year. I'm just not decided on that yet. And share, because as I always say, there's always somebody out there in the trauma community that could benefit from the videos. You never know who on your friends list, who on your social platforms could benefit from seeing a video like this. And so I appreciate each and every one of you. I appreciate you for being here. I appreciate you for, sharing some good laughter in the comments and things like that too, for giving your love and support each week. By showing up and just being present. I really mean that. It means the world to me to have each and every one of you here, even though the ones I can't see, the ones that are in the chat as well. To all of you, I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Next week, same time, we'll be live 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time next Monday. So I hope to see you there. Share my page. And, again, that's what it's all about. It's about getting people out there and sharing and helping be an advocate for the mental health community, because it's together, all of us together, not just me. When God said 1 in a million, I was like, okay, I got 1 million people to change. But, when you guys show up week after week, now you're like, now we might be 10 in a million. And so it's changing. We're all advocates. We all want to be the change and see the change. And so it's working together. So if I could ask you to just do me one favor, if you could just share, again, that would be phenomenal. If you could just share the video to your social platforms and things like that for me too, and just be able to get what we're doing out there. And so what you would do is you would actually go into on Facebook, where you're viewing this. Click on the 3 dots, I believe, or if you're actually looking at, probably not the 3 dots because you're actually looking at the Facebook there. It should say like thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm not actually looking at it because obviously I'm in StreamYard, but and then share. Just click that button and it'll say, where do you want to share it to? I think it gives you the options of Facebook, Instagram, maybe TikTok, all of those. But if you can just share, I would really appreciate it. Thank you, Heather, because I say this week after week. You know what? I do this because I have a passion. I do this because, I want to be able to empower others and inspire others with my story of growth, with development, taking the negative of the negative outcome and trying to turn it around and see the good, see the changes and everything like that. And to be able to help other people. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do. And by having your love and support means the world to me. And so again, one other thing that I do want to bring up is if you are interested, Rise Up from Trauma. That is where we are doing our mental health conference, February 21st and 22nd of 25. It's a 2-day event. From February 3rd to the 8th, and I think it's the 10th through the 15th, we're doing pre-conference sessions. And so tickets for trauma survivors to attend all of that is $149. And so that's the special that you'll get. You get on there, and when you go to riseupfromtrauma.com, you click on summit tickets, I believe it is. There's actually an option there that you can pay over 6 months. And so, you'll still get into the conference and everything like that. And so as of right now, I believe we have 10 pre-conference sessions, 2 keynote speakers. I think we're up to 30 breakout and workshop sessions the day of the conference. And so the conference is going to be huge. And so I'm just hoping that each and every one of you will be able to attend. It's for trauma survivors, family members, for teachers, educators, professionals, if they would like to join as well. But it's really for the trauma community. It's really bringing in topics and a lot of tools and resources that you may not get otherwise anywhere else. So I hope that you will consider buying a ticket and supporting the conference, and maybe sharing that website on your social media as well. So I appreciate each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Monday evening. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Praying for all of you to be blessed. Have a wonderful and safe week. And as always, you know how to get in touch with me if you ever have any questions, you ever need any support, anything, you know where to find me. I would love to be your mentor, just to give you that, just so you know that you have that support that you need, as we all do on this journey of recovery and healing. So Scott, thank you again. I appreciate you and everybody else that was here. Michael, Nick, Sly Fox, who else was here? Preston, Heather, Michael, and again, whoever else I can't see that was in the chat. I appreciate each and every one of you. I hope you have a good night, a blessed week, and I will see you all next Monday. Good night, everyone.